Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Meg Bouvier. I am, you know me as a creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have almost 40 years of experience at NIH, first as an applicant, then as an intramural researcher, then as a staff writer for longstanding director, Dr. Francis Collins, and now as a full-time NIH grant editor and trainer. I have helped clients land almost 700 million in federal funding, and I'm here to answer your questions today in my kind of confused state as I emerge from my editing fog today to answer your questions. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. What people should know, it is May 13th, and if you're anything like me, you're kind of like just staggering into the final weeks of the deadline on the cycle 2 applications. So the R01s are due June 5th. The NIH deadline is June 5th. For most of you, it's due to your internal pre-award support office 5 business days ahead. The Ks are due on June 12th. The small format Rs, the R21, R03s, are due on the June 16th, and then all the resubmissions are due in July. And some applications are due even sooner. So I'm kind of breaking my hours-long concentration on an R25 right now that is due at the end of May. So I'm sure many of you are in the midst of writing. So feel free to begin to put your questions in the Q&A box. What you should know at NIH right now, they are hard launching the new BioSketch format, so you're going to have to create that in the common forms using Science CV. We have already given a mini tutorial on that, so if you're looking for some advice on that, you could take a look at the recordings of the bonus mini tutorials on your dashboard. Or if you're watching this on our open YouTube channel, you can just take a look at some old recordings of As the Grant Writing Expert. They've kind of slowly been working out the glitches. So for example, a colleague of mine told me, there was a problem with it whereby you couldn't list something as active to support and have 0% effort. Which was a problem because some people were on no-cost extensions on active grants and were listing 0% of effort, but it's still active. So apparently that problem has now been cleared up. I'm sure there'll be other glitches that they figure out. Yeah, that's the big thing that's going on at NIH right now is in terms of the applications is ironing out all the glitches on the new form. And other than that, in terms of what you should be watching in the library, hopefully nothing. Hopefully you're just writing and editing like I am. For those of you who are working on a longer time frame where your deadline is not right around the corner, I did just post an update. We just uploaded an updated Master the T32 course. So if that's of interest to you, have a look at that. And I know that we have another Q&A session coming up for Ask the Grant Writing Expert on May 27th. And then in June, we start with a whole new batch of mini tutorials. So on June 10th, I'm going to have a new person coming on. Her name is Kate Montgomery from Goldenrod Funding, I think is the name of her company. And she has a lot of expertise in SBIRs. And now that the SBIR program has been reauthorized, I decided to have her come on. So she's going to present a series of 5 mini tutorials starting on June 10th and going all the way until next February on all kinds of things having to do with non-dilutive funding for small companies and how to get funding for small companies, the kinds of things, projects that get funded, the kinds that don't, SBIR 101, all kinds of stuff like that. I also have Emily Clemens coming back in June. Recall that she is a colleague who is recently retired as a scientific director at the CDMRP program. So she'll be coming back Veronica Redmond is coming back. Let's see. Yeah, just a bunch of good topics coming up in the upcoming months. We're already booked through to the end of next February. Oh, and I'm giving a mini tutorial on the PF5. I know we had some people who were asking about that new mechanism. So lots of cool stuff coming up. So stay tuned for that. And of course, we have First Fridays will be on June 5th next time. And the registration for that is in the chat. Okay, so here is one question typed in. I'm currently preparing an R61 R33 application. So for those who don't know, that's a type of clinical trial planning grant. The R61 part is for the early phase, and you choose that if an R21 isn't a large enough budget. R61 gives you more money, and the R33 portion is the subsequent phase to that. So like all phased mechanisms, you write the application so that there's a set of milestones to be achieved at the end of the first phase so that program staff can make a go, no-go decision. Because they don't just release the money for the whole, it's usually 5 years. So, and it's usually broken up like 1 year, 4 years, or 2 years, 3 years. That's usually how the R61, R33 is. Okay, so this person has a set of 3 questions. I'd like to ask whether there are any differences in the application format between an R01 and an R61, R33. Also, approximately how many pages of preliminary data are typically expected. So yeah, there's a big difference between these applications. So let me answer the second part first, because that one's a little simpler. You're expected to have less preliminary data on an R61, R33 compared to an R01. But like, how does one quantify preliminary data? I get this question all the time. You're all in different fields. So it's really hard for me to say this much is enough, So, but I can tell you that you will be required to have less on an R61, R33, because it's a form of a phased clinical trial planning grant. So as such, it is also, and as a phased mechanism, the application is quite a bit different than the R01. So for example, if you were writing an R01, you would be applying for funding for a full-scale trial. That's what an R01 would be for, whereas an R61, R33 is a clinical trial planning grant. So you'll be expected to have less data, and you'll have to look at the NOFO to see exactly what is allowed on your specific NOFO. Sometimes they'll only allow feasibility projects to be proposed. They won't allow any efficacy data to be obtained. But the big thing is that it's a phased mechanism. So you're going to have to write not just the research strategy, but the aims page themselves accordingly, which basically means that you'll have to indicate which aims are for which phase, and you'll have to indicate exactly what the milestones are for the R61 phase so that program officers can determine what your operational definition of success is on the first phase. So, like let's say you have, I don't know, let's say you have 3 aims, and the first 2 aims are the R61 portion. You're going to have to say what the milestone is for those. So it would be aim 1, and you could put parenthetically R61 phase, and then say what the aim is, describe the aim, and then at the bottom of the write-up for the aim, you could put a milestone for success, or colon, and then say whatever the milestone might be for success. We will have adapted the questionnaire for this population, based on feedback from an advisory group. Maybe that's the operational definition of success on that aim. And then you would do the same thing for any aim related to the first phase. And then, of course, you don't have to do that for the second phase because there's no go, no-go decision for the second phase. Although you would have to say, like aim 3, you'd have to put parenthetically R33. So I actually chapter 2 of Master the R series, I give there's a slide in there that gives 2 or 3 examples of, I think 3, of how to set up an AIMS page for a phased project. So you could take a look at that. Since this is my first submission, can I omit the introduction to resubmission and yes, exactly, yeah. So you would have, since it's a first submission on this grant type, you would not have an introduction to the resubmission and revision application. That's a one-page document that only goes with a resubmission. For the 12-page research strategy section, approximately how many pages are typically appropriate for the significance, innovation, and approach sections? That's going to vary tremendously. So it's gonna vary by mechanism. It's gonna vary by project. And it's gonna vary depending on how much information you put in there. So as it would on an R01. So for an R61 R33, because you're going to have probably less preliminary data than you might have on an R01, like on an R01, maybe a total of like 4 pages might be of your 12 pages might be devoted to describing your preliminary data. Maybe you wouldn't have that much of your write-up apportioned to the preliminary data on an R61 R33. So for the significance section, maybe you would have something like 1.5 to 3 pages. The innovation, unless it's something, if it's like some sort of development of a novel tool, which it might be, if it's a development of like a novel tool, your innovation section is going to be longer. And if not, it's going to be shorter. So in a situation where you're not developing a novel tool, maybe your innovation section would be like 1/2 page. But if you're developing something new, it might be 2 pages. It could be quite long because that's kind of the selling point of the project, is that you're developing some sort of innovative novel tool. Like a new risk assessment tool or something like that. And then the rest would be devoted to the approach. For all of these mechanisms, the lion's share of the 12 pages is always going to go to the approach. It's always going to be something like 8 to 10 pages will be for the approach for any of these mechanisms, R01 or R61 or 33. Okay, that covers all of the questions. So if you have more questions on that, let me know. I will let you know that I did give a mini tutorial, and I'm not going to remember when it was, but it was on clinical trial planning grants, where I kind of reviewed all the different mechanisms, common mechanisms that you would use at NIH for a clinical trial planning grant, which would be the big ones would be like the R21, the R34, the R61, and the R33. And then the phased mechanisms R21, R33, and R61, R33. And I've also done YouTube shorts on these, a whole series of them, and I've written a blog post about them as well. And in fact, we're in the process of updating the blog post because it still gets so many hits. So if you're looking for a little bit of a deeper dive, you could either look at the bonus mini tutorial course in your course library for the clinical trial planning grant mini tutorial, or the YouTube channel, or the blog post, or any combination of these. How much preliminary data is generally required for a DP2? So not a lot, but I'm also going to look. The last time I looked, the DP2 was not active. So let me just see. I'm just looking it up now to see if there's an active NOFO. Yeah, I don't believe there is an active NOFO for that. So I give you that information. Let's see. I'm going to search in a different way to see if I can find it. Yeah, I'm not seeing an active NOFO. Does anybody know if oh, wait. Let me see if this is active. There is a number here. It hasn't been active for quite some time. Let me see if it's actually been released or if anybody knows if it's been released. Let me know so that I have the information. Hmm. Yeah, it seems like, man, it's so much harder to pull these up now that they list them differently. Yeah, here it is. Wow. Oh, no, it's forecasted. Yeah, it's still forecasted, so it's not active. Yeah. I don't think it's been released yet. So you don't need a ton of data on the DP2, and I've done mini tutorials on the whole high risk, high reward portfolio at NIH. So the ones for ESI specifically are the DP2 and the DP5. But then there are other ones as well, and there are two other ones in the high risk, high reward: the Pioneer Award and the blanket on the name of the other one. But there are four of them total, and the last time I checked, none of them are active. So yeah, I'm gonna bookmark that question and have a lengthier discussion. Like we keep like the mini a mini tutorial on those because I give one typically like every year. Um, Especially because ESIs have options open to them. They can apply for the CATs, the DP2, the DP5, or the parent R01 or topic specific NOFOs with the ESI funding advantage. So I usually give tutorials, mini tutorials on all of these so that ESI applicants know what their options are. But we keep delaying the one for the high risk, high reward portfolio because it's been forecasted but not released. So anyway, yeah, we'll get back to that when it's forecasted, when it's released. The deadline's supposed to be in August. So, and it's now May. So, check frequently to see if that's coming out anytime soon. I wanted to ask about eligibility of MIRA R35 from NIGMS. I currently hold ESI E35. I don't know what that is. Scheduled to end in August 2027. I don't know what an E35 is. I'm planning a renewal submission. I'm trying to determine the best timing for a renewal submission. Um, what are considerations to make the best decision? Is renewal submission only a one-time opportunity? If renewal is not successful, will I still be eligible to submit a new application before September 2028, the second fiscal year following the current award ends? Oh, R35. It was R35. It was a typo. And I got all excited. I thought it was going to be a new mechanism for me. Okay, so you currently hold an ESI R35 and it's scheduled to end in August 2027. You're planning a renewal submission. I'm trying to determine the best timing for renewal. What are considerations? So like the typical, and I'd have to look this up specifically for this NOFO, because I don't know specifically for this NOFO, but the typical rule at NIH, and it probably applies to the NIGMS ESI MIRA, is that, oh, here we go, 26/121 PAR 26. 121. The typical rule is you get two shots at a competing renewal. That's the typical rule. So if it doesn't say otherwise, let me search and see in the NOFO, if I search the NOFO renewal. Yeah, I'd have to dig into this deeper. I'm getting 31 hits on the word renewal in the NOFO. So I would have to dig through this. Um, more carefully. Oh, here's the section on renewals. Um, MIRA renewals are expected to have higher success rates compared to R1s due to the Institute's commitment to the program, as well as the consolidation of separate research programs, which will result in fewer applications. If a MIRA renewal application is unsuccessful, the grant will terminate at the end of the approved period. Huh. Okay, so it's different than the typical scenario. A resubmission application is not allowed on the renewal. You'd have to submit a new MIRA application as long as you're eligible. Um, yeah, so for most NIH grants, you get two shots at a competing renewal. In fact, I'm working with somebody now who thought that her second attempt, her third attempt was going to be a competing renewal, and it's not. It's just going to be an A0. But this one is different. The NIGMS MIRA sounds like you only get one shot at the competing renewal. Um, Ergo, I would plan it carefully because um, they're saying right here in the NOFO that the MIRA renewals have a higher rate of success because I mean, it's just a much smaller pool, right? So um, and they may have budget to renew a lot of them. That may be something that they anticipate doing. So I would probably put it off as long as you possibly can to submit the best, strongest possible application that you could and still be within the window of it being a renewal application. But in terms of the timing and juggling where you are in terms of like being able to demonstrate success in the first uh, funding period, I would talk to the program officer to see if the number of publications and the amount of preliminary data that you have from the first funding period would be considered success by the program officers, and to confirm how late you can possibly put in a competing renewal and still have it considered a competing renewal since you're only going to get one shot at it. Um, they have some statement under eligible individuals. So yeah, and I would ask about that too, because I don't know. Um, institutes have different rules about when they stop considering you an ESI, so some institutes will consider you an ESI on a subsequent submission as long as you're within 10 years of your terminal degree. And others feel like, oh no, you're done. You've already had your PI on a primary grant. But this one actually does allow resubmissions, competing renewals. So in theory, you should be able to get the second MIRA, ESI MIRA. Even if you've had a first, you may be eligible for the second. So I would talk to the program officer about it and see what they have to say. Okay, I understand that the application deadline for R61 R33 is October 1st this year. However, I'm considering submitting my application 2 to 3 months earlier. I would like to ask whether submitting early would allow me to receive any feedback before the deadline. No. In addition, if revisions are needed, would it be possible to modify and resubmit the application before the final deadline? No. So no to both of those. So I don't even know if you can submit. When you say submit, I assume you mean upload to grants.gov. Also, when you say I understand the R61 R33 deadline this year is XYZ, there isn't a parent announcement for this. It's going to be a specific NOFO. So you just have to look and see what it is on your specific NOFO. But when you say submitting my application 2 to 3 months ahead, I assume you mean uploading it to grants.gov portal. And the answer to all of those things, if that's what you mean, is a resounding no. Once you upload, you're done. The only thing you can do is update very specific types of information via the post-submission material policy. So I don't even know if you can upload 2 to 3 months ahead of time, because usually you have to be able to select the NOFO. It has to be open and available for selection in grants.gov. I don't know what the advantage of submitting it 2 to 3 months early would be. So maybe I'm missing something. Oh, here it is. My ESI status expires 40 days before the deadline. Oh, no, that's a different person. That's not the reason. Yeah, so hi, I don't know why you would submit 2 to 3 months before your deadline. Because you can't do anything with it. Once it's submitted, you're done. You can't, and nobody's going to give you feedback. It's still going to be, uploading early isn't going to do anything for you except take it out of your clutches and not allow you to make any updates to it whatsoever. And it's just going to sit there and wait for all the other applications to come in and for the application deadline to close. And then the whole group will go for review to CSR. So I can't think of a reason. What would be the reason to upload that early? I'm not even sure you can. If you want feedback on it, you could send a names page to a program officer, or you could ask a colleague to review it, but nobody at NIH is going to touch it until after the deadline. So uploading early it provides no benefit whatsoever. So don't do that. Yeah. So, but it sounds like your goal is to get feedback on it. I would do that within your organization, either by asking at your pre-award support office if there's a mechanism for some kind of red team review or editing services, or ask a colleague to look it over for you. But once it's uploaded to grants.gov, you can't touch it. You're done with it. Is it easy and straightforward to get no cost extension for NIH awards from recent records? I think that varies a lot. So that can vary by the reason for your no cost extension, and it can vary by your institute, and it can even vary by program officer. But my impression, just anecdotally, is that NIH has been pretty generous with no cost extensions for a whole host of reasons. Partly because of all of the disruptions because of the pandemic, and partly because of all the disruptions that have happened since January of 2025 because of the new administration. So my sense anecdotally is that it is fairly straightforward to get a no cost extension, but I kind of hesitate to say that in case you then go and ask your program officer and they don't give you one. So I would start, instead of starting with the program officer on this one, I would start with your pre-award support office, because they will have experience helping applicants ask for no cost extensions. And I'm not usually involved in anything post-submission. So this is like a post-award issue. And I'm not an expert on that, so I don't want to steer you wrong. So ask your grants office to help you with that, and how one would do it, and what one should say and what one should not say in requesting the no cost extension. That would be my suggestion. You're welcome. Okay, so this is back to this ESI MIRA question. My ESI status expires right around 40 days before the deadline for the ESI MIRA R35. I could submit an extension request to extend the ESI status, or I could also apply for the NIGMS MIRA R35 as a new investigator, which is a different PAR. Are there disadvantages to submitting an R35 MIRA as a new investigator, or should I try to extend my ESI status? I would do the second one. And just so that people understand, so NIGMS probably has always had, in my experience, the most robust R35 portfolio at NIH. So R35s, in the most general sense, are a way of providing, it's a mechanism to provide extended support to an applicant. It's usually a longer period of time than what the Institute provides through their traditional R01 pathway. And over the years, there have been other institutes that have offered R35s. There are usually like 2 to 3 other institutes that offer an R35, but the GMS portfolio is robust and it seems never to go away. And they have 2 different versions. One is for ESIs, and one is for new investigator and established investigator. So that's the NI/EI version. So this person is saying, like the ESI MIRA at R35 at GMS, it allows, I have one, it allows me to apply for a competing renewal. My ESI status is expiring. Should I try and get an extension and do the competing renewal on the ESI version, or should I just let it expire and apply for the new Investigator, established Investigator version? I'm recommending the former path because the funding lines are better on a competing renewal on the ESI MIRA. It says it right in the NOFO that the funding lines are favorable. And typically the funding lines are not that great on the NIEI version. So I would do whatever you could to get an extension on the ESI status and put in that. So that's going to be your timeline, right? Because this is the person who was asking about it earlier. So when I said wait as long as humanly possible to put in the competing renewal on the GMS ESI MIRA, because you only have one shot at it, that's going to be the rate limiting step, is how long the ESI extension is that you can get. And I don't know what your reason for the extension is, but I would put it in soon. And because sometimes they get backed up, NIH gets backed up, and it might take months for them to get back to you about the extension on your ESI deadline. And then see what they say and see if you can get in the competing renewal on the ESI R35 while you have ESI status, and whatever the latest deadline is that you can do it and still have ESI. So, but again, it's probably worth a conversation with a program officer, because sometimes there are just little quirks about the policies pertaining to these NOFOs. Particularly these unusual NOFOs where it's not just like a parent R01, or it's like a very specific program. Sometimes there are little quirks about it that I don't know about, and the program officer does. So in terms of figuring out the exact strategy, based on the information that you have given me and that I am aware of, that's what I think is the best strategy. But I would always double check that with the program officer to make sure that it jibes with what they think is the best strategy. Assuming that they list a program officer and you can get a hold of the person, which nowadays is a big if. Let's see if they list one, because I still have your NOFO open, I think. Right, yeah, I think this is still it. Yeah, and hyperlinks don't. Oh no, that's the MIRA. I'm looking at the MIRA. And none of the hyperlinks work on these NOFOs anymore on the table of contents. I don't know why. But anyway, yeah, that's my advice, is I think you should probably get the extension on the ESI and do the competing renewal as late as possible while you still have ESI, but double check it with the program officer for that mechanism. Okay, other questions for me? While I wait to see if people have other questions, I'll just remind everybody that in 2 weeks, we'll do another pure Q&A session. And then 2 weeks after that, I have a guest coming to speak about the SBIR program, the Small Business Program at NIH. And there is a registration in the chat for First Fridays, my virtual office hours, which will be Friday, June 5th at 11:30 Eastern time. That is a very relaxed format. We don't record it. There are no guests. There are no mini tutorials. You can just drop in and ask questions, or drop in and lurk as you like. So, okay, I'm going to give it one more minute to see if people have questions. And again, for those who are signing on late, a reminder that for all deadlines starting now at NIH, you can't submit your biosketch in the old format. They soft launched it in the cycle 1 deadlines in February and March, but it's the new format is required now. So you have to submit through using the NIH Common Forms through using Science CV. Not a specific grant writing question. How important do you think it is for individuals to respond to the RFI for the strategic plan? Let's see if I can open that quickly. Okay. That's a great question, Liz. So I am going to share it. Hold on a second. Okay, people should be able to see this. I hope it's, I'll zoom in a little bit in case it's, there we go. So from time to time, NIH will, or a specific institute will issue a request for information from the scientific community. And it could be about any number of things, but they're often about some sort of strategic planning process. I always think people should participate in these. Like I would be all over these things if it were me, you know. So for this particular one, it is NIH wide, an NIH wide strategic plan for fiscal years 2027 to 2031. Um, could there be a more important time to participate in this? I don't think so. Like, I would like to encourage every single one of you to participate in this and get your colleagues to participate in this and get everyone you know to participate in this. That's my take on this. So this is really kind of wide open. So you can see priority one, research areas, advanced foundational knowledge of human health and disease. That's goal one. Goal two, prevent disease and promote health across the lifespan. Goal three, advance and optimize interventions, treatments, and cures, which basically to me is an invitation to plug your area of research. So research capacity, develop and sustain an interdisciplinary research workforce. I mean, these are just like these are always the priority areas in every single strategic plan, right, at NIH. But yeah, I would say I would argue that there could not possibly be a more important time for the scientific community to participate in a strategic planning process than right now. So, and remember that this is for fiscal years 2027 to 2031. Most of that time period will not exist during the current administration. We will have a different administration for most of that time period, right? So, and I don't know what that means. None of us know what that means. We can't read the tea leaves. Who knows what the administration will be, but it won't be this one. So, you know, this is hugely important in my opinion. So thank you, Liz, for putting that on my radar to mention today. Yeah, I would really encourage people to participate in that. So Riley, are you able to grab that URL out of the Q&A and drop it in the chat? I'm going to see if I can quickly do it.
I did it.
Okay, thank you. You're always much faster than I am. So I'm as slow as molasses when it comes to this. Yeah, so there's a URL in the chat that has information about how to participate in the request for information, the RFI, on the NIH-wide strategic planning process. This will be the third one, the third 5-year plan that NIH is producing. So we're currently in the second one, which in theory expires at the end of 2026. Yeah, so for sure, it is hugely important to participate in these planning processes, you know, and institutes do them as well. So if you see a notice about your institute asking for input about their strategic planning process, participate in that too. What harm could there be in telling the government that you think they should do research in your area? So, and the same person is saying only 160 individuals responded for the last one. Granted response period was February to March 2020, so not a great time. Yeah, so like NIH supports, I don't know, something like 33,000 extramural grants. every year, some huge number like that. Like, oh my God, weigh in, people. You may feel like it's like just shouting into the void, but this information actually gets collected and analyzed. And and it's used to justify certain types of priorities. So um, particularly at a time when people are maybe feeling frustrated and not empowered. Absolutely do this, participate in this. It's hugely important to do that. It's always important to do it, but it's arguably um, more important than ever. So, and for those who are watching this on an open YouTube channel, hopefully you can freeze the video on when I did that screen share and just copy the URL or search for RFI on NIH-wide Strategic Plan 2027 to 31. So, all right, that was a good note to end on. So with that, I am going to sign off and return to my R25. And then move on to a couple of Ks in the upcoming days. That's what my week looks like this week. So I just finished two R01s earlier in the week. And then the middle part is R25, and then I'm ending with a couple of Ks. So yeah. And then next week I'll be out of office because my daughter's graduating from college. So I am taking a couple of days off from that. So if I'm working with anybody on the call and I don't immediately respond to your emails, that is why. So, but I will be back toward the end of next week. So anyway, that's it. I hope to see you in 2 weeks at the next Q&A session for Ask the Grant Writing Expert. And again, first Friday of June at 11:30 Eastern is my virtual office hours. And other than that, I wish you all the very best of luck. And as the French would say, courage. And I'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Good luck, everybody. Bye-bye.